And I believe that if we act strongly and with clarity, the American people not only will support it, but they will be happy with it, and it will make a positive difference for our country. And would thank the President and would yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Well, the Senate's in session today. General speeches for the next few moments or so. And shortly, we expect further debate on a small business bill that continues innovation funds for small, high-tech, and research firms. We are also expecting debate on amendments, a number of them unrelated to the measure. Lawmakers are working behind the scenes on how to deal with those unrelated amendments. We'll get to that in just a moment. While this quorum call continues, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee is holding a hearing today on disease clusters and environmental health. Among the witnesses is environmental activist Erin Brockovich, who fought a legal challenge against a California utility company suspected of dumping dangerous chemicals in a residential community in the 1990s.
Direct mortality cost of lost productivity due to premature deaths. So your point is so well taken. And I think if our bill moves forward and we can get to the bottom of this, and let's say we go into a place and we find out there's no connection to the environment. They may find it. They found it in several cases in California. All right, we tried. it's really genetics. If they find out that there's something in the soil or the air or the water that we can fix, now you're going to prevent a lot of these cancers from happening. So I think our bill, at the end of the day, it calls for efficiency as we move forward. Now, I wanted to talk about why EPA. I think it's a fair question. This bill isn't an EPA bill. It says that all the agencies are going to coordinate. The reason we said EPA is if they find it is an environmental issue, it is EPA that has the ability to deal with air, water, and soil. I mean, that the others, CDC doesn't. They will find out what the cause is, but they don't they can't move to fix it. So we wanted to give the agency that could fix the problem, if there is a problem, the lead so that this isn't just an exercise. It actually has to follow through. But if you are concerned about this, if you want this spelled out, let us work together, because I got to say this, and Trevor knows this, and he made the point that he's both the minority witness and the majority witness. In these days when we have so much rancor, I would hope we could come together around this very simple idea. So if there's something really troubling you or bothering you, you want to work with us in a positive way, that would be fine. We want to get this out. We want to move this. We want to show America that we're not happy to see Erin Brockovich, who's a private, you're an attorney now, yes? You never did do that. Well, she's an attorney by osmosis then. You know, an advocate, an activist and an advocate for communities. That people are calling her because they are frustrated with our response. I would also put in the record a little acknowledgement here. The California EPA and the Department of Public Health expressed their appreciation to the U.S. EPA for providing important technical consultation as they looked at causes of birth defects in cattlemen. Now, in California, now the jury is out. We don't know whether this is a cancer cluster due to environment or something else. But I think the EPA can be very effective, and it's nice to get this comment from my state, so I wanted to put that in the record. So I guess, and I have to say, this was written in December 2010, so this was before Jerry Brown took over. This was written by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think it's important. It was a, bipartisan thank you. So, Trevor, I would like to give you the last comment of the day from the panel. If there's one thing you could tell Senator Boozman, because he missed your testimony, if you could sum up why you support the Boxer-Crapo bill, if you could look him in the eye and tell him what it is, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you, Senator, for being here. I have known many children who have lost their lives and lost limbs to cancer, and it's heartbreaking to see that, and I think that's why we're all here today, to do what we can, as Chair Boxer said, if there is a problem, that we address that. And I would also like to say that the medical community, Tumor Registry, the CDC, are overburdened with data. And I think that this would streamline and consolidate the process. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to say thank you to this entire panel, all of you. You've just helped us enormously.
Madam Chair.
And yes,
could I just say one
Senator,
thing?
of course.
Again, I guess what I was thinking, the British Navy, they had a problem in the old days because their sailors were developing scurvy, okay? And so they were able to discover that was from, lack of getting vegetables when they were on board, fruits. And so I guess what I would like is a situation where when we have a problem in a cluster, regardless of the disease, that when we go and investigate, we investigate and figure out the cause, which if the EPA came out, and again, I'm not slamming the EPA at all, but you tend to think in terms of, your training and whatever. and they established that the paint on the boat was good, you know, the decking was good, and there was no environmental cause in that way, then we wouldn't have discovered that you know, the people needed to be eating more fruits. So I guess that's my only concern is where we're going and what agency and how
well, this is what I'm trying to say.
I think
we include every
Solomon
agency.
said, coordinate.
Well, that's the whole point of the bill. It's the entire response is coordinated. It includes the EPA, the ATSDR, the NIH, the CDC. Everybody is involved. And in addition, we pull in the state apparatus, we pull in the local city, county. You're exactly right. You don't send in the EPA. That's not what our bill does. Our bill says we're going to coordinate this response. So everything that you said is what we do. And it's high time we did it, because I don't want to see a private citizen getting calls, because there's no faith in the government right now, because we're just not coordinated. So I hope you'll take a look at this, and I think you'll like what you see. And if you want us to make it more clear, we'll make it more clear. I want to thank so much this panel. You have been excellent witnesses, and I look forward to the day that we pass Trevor's Law out of this committee, we bring it down to the floor, we have everyone's support, and we move it through. And Trevor, you know, life takes so many twists and turns, and it's a mystery why. But clearly, your life took a twist and a turn in a way that has given you the power to communicate your story, and the empathy and the compassion that you bring to this. And frankly, your common sense side as well is extraordinary. And just thank you. You know, you could have gone on with your world and put this behind you and said, you know, wow, I dealt with this in my life, but I'm closing that chapter. What you are doing is so enormously helpful, and we are so grateful. And your senator is so proud of you, and we thank you, and we stand adjourned. That's terrific. Let's try to work here.
Wrapping up that hearing in the Dirksen Senate Office Building on Capitol Hill. Right now, here in the Senate, a quorum call on the Senate floor. It's been general speeches since they gabbled in this morning at 10. Shortly, we are expecting more debate on a small business bill that continues innovation funds for small high-tech and research firms. We're also expecting debate on amendments, a number of them unrelated to the measure. Lawmakers are working behind the scenes on how to deal with those unrelated amendments. The House is in today. They'll be gaveling in at 2 Eastern, members returning after a week-long district break. Today, we expect debate on just 2 bills, temporary extending of funding for an airport and airways bill, and more work on a measure that would get rid of the Home Affordable Modification, or HAMP program. 1 hour of general debate and debate on at least 9 amendments on that bill. You can see the House live on C-SPAN, and of course the Senate here on C-SPAN too.
Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that I may speak as a morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, later as we move to the bill on small business, I'll be offering, I hope, a second-degree amendment to Senator Johanns' amendment. And I speak today on behalf of middle-class families and on behalf of small businesses. I want to start by saying that I fully support, as I've already done in a series of votes, repealing the 1099 reporting requirement, but strongly believe that we have to do so in a manner that does not increase the burden on our small businesses and employees. The amendment of Senator Johanns certainly only helps small businesses through the repeal of the 1099 provision. But, and this is less well known, I believe it actually hurts small business employees as well. It's a double-edged sword. The Johanns amendment risks driving up health insurance costs and cutting health insurance coverage for small businesses. As you know, the Affordable Care Act provides tax credits to families who earn under $74,000 per year to help them purchase health insurance. Those tax credits are set at the start of the year. Then at tax time, when families actually report their annual income, the tax credits are reconciled with their annual household income to ensure they receive the correct amount of assistance. Because income and other family circumstances can change in the course of a year, individuals might end up getting excess tax credits even though the amount of the payment was correct at the time. For example, a family with an unemployed worker who secures a job midway through the year, and hopefully can do so as we continue to work on this economy to have it grow, at a small business, and has rightfully received a tax credit while unemployed, could face a stiff tax hike to repay the amount of the subsidy because the family's annual income ends up higher for the second half of the year. This family received the correct amount and did nothing wrong. Let me say that again. These individuals did nothing wrong. While unemployed, these individuals needed those tax credits to be able to get health insurance. That's why we passed this reform, to help those very middle-class working families in need. Now, under current law, we provide a reasonable repayment requirement if the tax credit an individual receives exceeds the amount they should have received because of unexpected changes in income or family status. We don't give them a pass, but we don't expect all families with an annual income of $70,000 to have $10,000 in savings to pay the surprise tax bill they'll get in April either. So we set caps on what they would have to pay back depending on what they earn. The Johanns amendment makes harmful changes to these middle-class families. Under the Johanns amendment, some families could have to pay back as much as $12,000 in some cases, and that's too high a price. We shouldn't ask small business employees to take that much of a hit. They're the ones who are going to the exchanges to purchase coverage. They're the ones working for the mom-and-pop shop who doesn't offer coverage. My amendment isn't about these families alone, however, as difficult as a situation they may be in. This amendment is about what the Johanns offset could do to health care costs and coverage for small businesses and for those who make their living from small businesses. This risky offset could drive up premiums and force more individuals to refuse coverage. We're not talking about paying back tax credits. We're talking about driving up the costs on families and small businesses, many who have never even taken a tax credit to begin with. So my amendment would simply direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services to study the offset in the Johanns Amendment and determine its effect on small business. What's so wrong about that? Determine its effect on small business. We're trying to help small businesses by eliminating the 1099 provision. Well, let's make sure we continue to help them and not put extra costs on them. Specifically, to determine whether there is an increase in health insurance costs or a decrease in health coverage for small businesses. If the study finds either, then current safe harbor provisions would remain in effect. The same safe harbors we supported in the SGR bill, the doc fix in December. Passing 1099 would not be affected. That would move forward. So the claim that somehow the 1099 wouldn't ultimately be eliminated is false. The 1099 would not be affected. That would move forward. We would eliminate that responsibility from small businesses. So you can be both for my amendment and Johanns because it would still repeal 1099. Let me make it clear. We all want 1099 repealed, and I have voted in a series of ways to do exactly that. And my amendment does not in any way affect, delay the repeal of 1099. The only potential change my amendment makes would be to the risky offset in the underlying amendment, and only if this study finds that it actually hurts small businesses. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have come to the floor arguing that, quote, a study would simply delay repeal of 1099, that further studying this risky offset would prolong the 1099 issue, that if we just pass the amendment without protecting small businesses, this bill can go right to the President. Well, we've actually passed 1099 repeal already and shown that we have the votes necessary to make this become law. And it's not going to the President to become law in this bill because this bill hasn't even cleared the House. At the same time, I heard no mention of what this offset could do to small businesses and their health care costs, not one word. I did hear that further studying the impacts it may have on small business would only delay repeal of 1099. A simple read of my amendment would be enough to know that is incorrect. My amendment directs a study to be done after repeal of 1099 is signed into law. Let me make it clear. Nothing in my amendment slows down repeal of 1099. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are also trying to frame this debate as either you are for or against small businesses. But they are helping and harming them at the same time with the Johanns Amendment. With this second degree, we can have a conversation about helping small businesses and ensure that small business employees will not get hurt at the end of the day. Now, we haven't had the Joint Tax Committee on Taxation determine a revenue score yet, but it's important to point out this amendment does not spend an additional dime. It simply protects small businesses from higher health care costs and coverage cuts. If there is any revenue score associated with it, that would only be due to the study finding that this offset drives up health care costs or drives down health coverage for small businesses. Wouldn't we want to know that? We're all here supposedly arguing to try to enhance the opportunity for small businesses to have less burdens, to be able to grow, to be able to prosper, to create jobs. Well, we certainly would want to know, whether this offset drives up health care costs associated with small businesses or drives down the health care coverage for small businesses. Why is anyone afraid of that? Why is anyone fearful of that? So for those who may consider opposing my amendment, think of this. On the one hand, if you do not believe that this offset will hurt small businesses, there's no harm in voting for it because you believe that the study will not show premium increases or coverage cuts, so the offset would remain in place. If you believe that my amendment would have a revenue score, then you're assuming that the offset hurts small businesses. It's one way or the other. It's not a gray area here. The idea of protecting small businesses in this manner has precedent. I have a history working across the aisle to support small businesses, including co-sponsoring a Republican amendment to the Wall Street Reform Bill, which requires regulators to ensure new rules do not harm small businesses. We thought it was a good idea then to protect small businesses in the event new rules might unfairly impact them, and I strongly believe we should come together now to protect small businesses if this risky offset drives up health care costs on small businesses or forces cuts in their coverage. I would just simply ask, who in the world, especially during these fragile economic times, would want to do anything that could raise costs on small businesses? Let's protect them and the 1099 repeal by supporting my second-degree amendment. Now, you know, I listened to my colleague from Nebraska, who I've worked with on some bipartisan efforts on housing for the disabled, so we get along very well. I respect him. And actually, I supported 1099 repeal. I was one of the 20 Democrats who voted for his amendment in November, and other issues like housing for the disabled. So it's with some regret that we find ourselves in a different view here. There have been questions raised about the sincerity of our opposition to the manner in which the offset is included in the gentleman's amendment. The senator from Nebraska says that that's an almost identical offset, was passed unanimously by the Senate just 4 months ago, and I think our definitions of almost identical are very different. Yes, it's true that we made changes in the payback tax to pay for the dock fix in December, but that provision was very different from the one we're debating today. The one today, unlike before, removes protections that we included in December in the dock fix to protect families from unlimited tax liability, which could be as high as $12,000. I mean, you're talking about taxing these families through no fault of their own. What family of three making $74,000 annually gross can afford an unexpected $12,000 tax bill in April? I can't think of many, but that's exactly what could happen under the gentleman's amendment. That was not the case in the provision that was enacted at the end of last year in the dock fix. We provided a phase-out that would have avoided this cliff and thus tax shock on middle-class families. The gentleman from Nebraska also said my second-degree amendment was just a delay tactic. That simply isn't true. I and 80 of my colleagues have already passed 1099 repeal in the Senate this year, so to question our support for 1099 repeal would be misleading. My understanding is that the Joe Hans proposal is an amendment to the small business bill we're debating, which has not passed the House. So this amendment we're debating today would not go directly to the President for his signature. It still needs to go through the whole process of the House. So we're not delaying anything in that regard. And finally, the only way that there would be any revenue shortfall here, those who would make the assertion that our amendment creates a revenue shortfall, well then what you have to be saying if you make that statement is that you believe that the savings from the Joe Hans offset comes from increasing premiums and reducing coverage on those who earn it through making our nation's small businesses run. That is not a proposition, I think, that they want to assert. So I will come back to the floor later to offer this second-degree amendment, and because it works to both repeal 1099 and ensure that there is not a tax on our small businesses and small business employees or a diminution of health care coverage, I am sure that we will get the support of our colleagues. With that, Mr. President, I yield to you.
Mr. President.
Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of S-493, which the clerk will report.
Calendar number 17, S-493, a bill to reauthorize and improve the SBIR and the STTR programs and for other purposes.
Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we get into a brief discussion of the bill that's on the floor, I have 9 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent for these requests to be agreed to and these requests to be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask the Chair, I know that we're discussing the bill, but do we have a time constraint? I understand that at 12 o'clock there may be some additional commentary.
There is no formal time constraints at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Let me just try to recap for just a moment, because it's my understanding that there may be some colleagues coming down to the floor around 12 o'clock to pay tribute to an extraordinary woman, an extraordinary American, Geraldine Ferrara, who we lost this week. And I most certainly want to be respectful to the members that are coming to the floor to pay tribute to our former colleague and an extraordinary leader. But let me remind colleagues that we are still trying today to get this bill, an important bill for the country, an important bill to help put this recession in our rearview mirror, an important bill that gives us yet one more very carefully crafted tool to help create jobs on main streets in rural areas, in suburban areas, and in urban areas all across this country. And that is the 8-year reauthorization of the Small Business Innovation and Research Program and Small Business Technology Transfer Program. This program is approximately 20 years old, first passed by Senator Warren Rudman when a report found its way to Congress that said, alarmingly, agencies of the federal government, whether it was the Department of Defense or NASA or NIH, were not accessing the power and the technology of the small business community, that when they went out to do research, they were just looking at research offered by either just universities, which we're very proud of the work that our universities do, but they were looking at really large businesses. What did GE have to offer? What did IBM have to offer? And it occurred to many members of Congress at that time that there was a tremendous amount of brain power and agility and quickness and cutting-edge innovative technologies resting in the minds and hearts and dreams of entrepreneurs and small businesses in America that the taxpayers weren't benefiting from. Mr. President, as you can imagine, you know, people might think of all this technology coming out of New York or California. They might skip over a place like Montana, where the President is from, or Louisiana, where this Senator is from. And so there were some very wise members that said, let's create a program that would direct at least a portion of the research and development funding of these large agencies so that small businesses can compete. Now, these are grants not given out by formula or on a first-come, first-served basis. These grants and contracts are given out based on merit, about what looks promising, about potential, and about what the taxpayers need in terms of dealing with problems. One thing that comes immediately to mind is the terrible tragedy unfolding in Japan as we speak, with the potential meltdown, the process of a nuclear reactor melting down. Some of the technology, Mr. President, being deployed to that situation, which is technology developed by the field of robotics. That technology was developed, a portion of it, through this SBIR program. So that makes very relevant the debate that we're having on the floor today, when people go home or now turning on their televisions or listening to their radio or over the Internet, following those unfolding dramatic developments in Japan, knowing that one of the companies that's been deployed and some of the material from the United States actually was developed through this program. So that's just one of 1,000 examples that Senator Snowe and I have provided in terms of testimony before the Small Business Committee, to the congressional record in our numerous speeches on the floor, to talk about the importance of this program. What we'd like to do is, I would like, as the manager of this bill, I'm not sure it's going to be possible, but I would most certainly like to have this bill voted on and passed by the end of this week. I'm not sure the leadership has decided that that is something that's possible, but I'd like to send a strong bill over to the House, hopefully a bill that doesn't have amendments on it that would warrant a presidential threat of a veto, and get this bill passed to the House and then passed on to the President so that he can sign it and send a very positive signal that his agenda and all of our agenda for innovation, having America be the best educated, the best competitors in the world in terms of the economy, and giving our small business yet another tool. We've worked on reducing the abuses in the credit card industry. We've worked on capital access through a new lending program. We've reduced fees, reduced taxes to the tune of $12 billion to our small businesses throughout the country in the last Congress. We want to continue to work on lowering taxes where we can, eliminating regulations, and supporting programs like this that work. Let's eliminate or modify those programs that aren't working, and let's step up our support and reauthorize the programs that are. The assessments done and the reviews of this program have been across the board very positive and outstanding by the independent researchers. Senator Snowe and I have taken into consideration those many reports in the drafting of this bill and made some changes to the program so that it moves forward for the 8 years. It will even be better. And one of my key goals and objectives is to make sure that states like Louisiana or Mississippi or Montana or Wyoming, states that have not previously been awarded many of these grants, that we have stepped up some technical assistance and help so that we can find the best technology in this country to apply to some of our most pressing problems, regardless of whether they're in sort of the big cities and big places like New York, Los Angeles, California, but that our entrepreneurs around the country are being benefited by a program that they have access to as well. So, Mr. President, I'm pleased that we can get back on the Small Business Innovation and Research Bill and Small Business Technology Transfer Bill. Senator Snowe and I will be coming to the floor periodically during the day to continue to move this bill along. I see my colleague, the senator from Maryland, who's scheduled to speak in just a few minutes. So, Mr. President, at this time, I will yield the floor. And again, I hope and I thank our colleagues for their cooperative nature that they've been working in terms of trying to get our bill passed that will be so important to so many people in all of our states. And I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that our remarks regarding the passing of Geraldine Ferraro appear in an appropriate place in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I also ask that the following senators be permitted to speak for 5 minutes each. Senators on the subject of Geraldine Ferraro, Senators Boxer, Hutchinson, Stabenow, Shaheen. I don't know if the gentlelady from Maine wishes to speak at this time or another time about, would you like to speak at this time? Let me reiterate the unanimous consent. The following senators be permitted to speak for 5 minutes each. Boxer, Hutchinson, Stabenow, Shaheen, Snowe.
Without objection.
Thank you. Well, Mr. President, we come to the floor with a heavy heart and great sadness. Geraldine Ferraro, a former member of the United States House of Representatives, a congresswoman from New York, who was the first woman to be nominated by a major party for vice president, has lost her gallant and persistent fight against cancer and has passed away. I really thank the leadership for offering a resolution noting the many contributions that she made to America and express the condolences for her family. Because you see, Mr. President, for we women before 1960, Jerry was a force of nature, a powerhouse. She changed American politics. She changed the way women thought of themselves and what we believed we could accomplish. On July 11, 1984, when Walter Mondale called Jerry Ferrero and asked her to be his vice presidential running mate, an amazing thing happened. They took down the men-only sign on the White House. They took down the men-only sign on the White House. For Jerry and all American women, there was no turning back, only going forward. America knows Jerry as a political phenomenon. I knew her as a dear friend and colleague. We served in the House together in the late 1970s, and when she left in 1984 to run for vice president, I left in 1986 to run for the Senate. We were among the early bird women in the House of Representatives, and as early birds, we weren't afraid to ruffle some feathers. We had some good times and passed some good legislation. It must be historically noted that when Jerry came to the House in 1979, only 16 women were there. In 1984, when she left, my gosh, we had moved to 23. But in 2011, on the day of her death, 74 women now serve in the House, 50 Dems, 24 Republicans, and 26 of those women are women of color. In the Congress, Jerry was a fighter. She was a fighter for New York. She fought for transit. She fought for tunnels. And she loved earmarks, earmarks that would help move her community forward. She also fought for the little guy and gal. She was known for her attention to constituent services, the senior getting a Social Security check, the vet who needed his disability benefits, the kid from a blue-collar neighborhood like herself who wanted to go to college. And she fought for women. She fought for our status, and she gave us a new stature. When the campaign was over, she continued for all of her life to be a source of inspiration and empowerment for women. In those early days of the second wave of the American women's movement, the movement defined we women on what we did not have access to. What was it we didn't have? Equal pay for equal work. It's hard to believe that we were not included in the research protocols at NIH. And when it came to having access to credit, we could not get a loan or a mortgage in our own name in many circumstances. We needed a husband, a father, or a brother to sign for it. But when Jerry was chosen for vice president, she showed us what we could be, what modern women in America had become. Women felt if we could go for the White House, we could go for anything. Jerry inspired. And on the night of July 19th, 1984, in San Francisco, in the Moscone Center, Jerry gave her acceptance speech. She became the first woman to be nominated for vice president for a major party. What a night. I was there. The thrill, the excitement in the room, the turbo energy that was there. 10,000 people jammed the Moscone Center. Guy delegates gave their tickets away to either alternates, to their daughters, to people who worked and helped out. They wanted to be there. People brought their children. They carried them. They put them on their shoulders to see what was about to occur. And when Jerry Ferrero walked on that stage, she electrified all of us. The convention gave her a 10-minute standing and resounding ovation. We just couldn't sit down because we knew a barrier had been broken, and for the rest, as she made history, there would be more on the way. During that campaign, it was hard-fought. She traveled over 55,000 miles, visited 85 cities, campaigned her heart out, but it was not meant to be. The ticket lost to Reagan Bush. But though she lost the election, she did not lose her way. Jerry never gave up and never gave in. Her storied career continued. A teacher at Harvard, a UN ambassador on human rights, always teaching, always inspiring, always empowering thousands of women here and around the world. Then in 1998, she was diagnosed with blood cancer. And once again, she was determined not to give up and not to give in. She began the greatest campaign of her life. She began the campaign for her own life. She fought her cancer. And she not only fought her cancer, she also fought for cancer victims. She forged a relationship with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, as well as my friendship. You see, Senator Kay Bailey will tell this story herself. Her brother Alan Bailey, suffered from the same disease as Jerry. They met through an advocacy group on multiple myeloma. And then they said, Alan Bailey and Jerry Ferrero joined hands and joined together, and Kay Bailey Hutchinson and I did, and we introduced the Jerry Ferrero Research, Investment, and Education Act. I wanted it to be Ferrero Bailey, but Alan very graciously said, Jerry's a marquee name, she'll attract a lot of attention, and we can get hopefully more money for research and more interest in this dreaded disease. That legislation passed, and it showed sometimes when we come together out of common adversity, we find common cause, and we get things done. That bill passed, and it is changing lives. Jerry did various clinical trials, and often we talked, and this is what she said to me during the last few weeks. She said, I'm glad I could be in those clinical trials. In many ways, they helped me live. But we also knew the research would provide lessons so that others could live. Once again, her mantra was, never give up, never give in. She had toughness, persistence, tenacity, and an unfailing optimism in the face of adversity. I believe it came from her own compelling and often riveting story. It was that personal story that brought us together. You see, Mr. President, we were both from European ethnic backgrounds. She Italian, I have my proud Polish heritage. We grew up in neighborhoods that were urban villages. Her father owned a small neighborhood dime store. My father owned a grocery store, very much involved with our customers and community. We had strong mothers who really wanted to make sure we had good educations. And when Jerry's dad died, Jerry's mother took a job in the garment industry, and she sewed little beads on wedding dresses to make sure her brother and Jerry had an education. Jerry did have that education. She went to Marymount. She became a scholarship girl because she was so smart and had so much talent. And she felt that it was the nuns who played such a big part in her life. They coached her to be smart, and they coached her to be a great debater, and they taught her about her faith. You see, for her, her faith was about the Beatitudes, especially the one that said, hunger and thirst after justice. The other day when Jerry and I were talking, she reminded me that not only did she go to Marymount, but so did Lady Gaga. And she said, I'm just sorry I can't live to go to more alumni associations. And then there was John, her beloved husband. A love story for the ages. I was there at this church just over a year ago when they renewed their vows for their 50th anniversary. Their vows were not just for a day or for a year, for a decade. You see, they believed that their vows are for eternity. And Jerry loved her husband, and she loved her children, Donna, John, and Laura. And she was so proud of them. One a doctor, one an accomplished businessman, another a TV producer, and also had worked on Wall Street. And oh my gosh, the grandchildren. There was always the pictures and the stories of many storied accomplishments. You see, Jerry Ferrero loved her family. She loved her extended family that went to her friends and her community. And she loved America because she believed, as she said to me, only in America, Barbara, would somebody who started out in a regular neighborhood, whose father passed away and a mother who taught her grit and determination, could go on to be the Vice President of the United States, to be an ambassador on human rights, and to make a difference in the lives of her family and her community. Jerry, we will miss you, but your legacy will live forever. Mr. President, that concludes my remarks, but I would now like to turn to Senator Barbara Boxer and then to Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
I'm so proud to be here with my colleagues, Senator Mikulski and Kay Bailey Hutchinson, because of a woman who brought us all together, despite any differences we might have, Geraldine Ferraro. And so I rise to pay tribute to Jerry, and I want to thank Senator Mikulski because I felt that her remarks just touched on every single point that I think needs to be made about our friend. Geraldine was a trailblazer. We all remember the first female vice presidential nominee of a major party, the first in U.S. history. She cracked open that glass ceiling for women seeking higher office. And that was a long time ago. And I just looked at the Associated Press, Mr. President, had a photo of when Jerry arrived in San Francisco to prepare for her speech to the convention. And I was there waiting for her to arrive, a much younger version of myself, I might say. And I don't remember what I said or did, but this picture tells a story. You know that old saying, a picture says 1,000 words. This one says 1,000,000 words. I've never seen anyone as excited as I appear to be and was in this picture. Arms open wide, body language just incredulous that we had reached this milestone, all the while knowing what a tough time it would be for Jerry, as it is for many women, whether they run for the U.S. Senate or they run for governor or they run for vice president. It's a tough road still, and especially all these many years ago, more than 20 years ago. Jerry was given a very hard time by the press. Jerry was given a very hard time by her opponent. And here's what she proved. She proved without question that women can stand up to the grilling, women can stand up to the pressure, women can go toe-to-toe with anybody. You know, I often say women are equal. We're not better or worse. We're equal. And Jerry proved it when her campaign took a tough turn and a lot of others would have just tried to contain the problem. She stood there in front of the press and said, here I am. You ask me anything you want, and I will stay here hour after hour. And you knew she meant it. She would have stayed there for days because that was Jerry. She was open-hearted. She was straight from the shoulder. She always said what was on her mind, and she did it in a way that was also very appealing because you knew this was a woman who was willing to look you in the eye and not give you any song and dance. I mean, it was what it was. And for that, she will be missed as a friend, as a colleague, and it is just difficult today to imagine what it was like then. Now, you know, we see our women figures here in the Senate and in the President's cabinet and in the Republican and Democratic parties making run for president or vice president. And it's hard to imagine a day that women were not actively engaged in the highest of offices. And frankly, that is Geraldine Ferraro's abiding legacy. Because as Senator Mikulski so eloquently stated, she didn't win that race. It was a tough race. It was a very tough race. But she proved a woman could do this. And
when Jerry spoke about change, and she felt in her heart the history-making moment. I remember her in a white suit. It was as if it was yesterday. And I remember saying, in those years, TV's people always said, don't wear white. Jerry wore white. She was magnificent. And that smile and her togetherness at this moment in history, when not only was the whole country watching, the whole world was watching. It was an electric moment. And I want to read what she said that night. She said, quote, "By choosing a woman to run for our nation's second highest office, you sent a powerful signal to all Americans. There are no doors we cannot unlock. We will place no limits on our achievements. If we can do this, we can do anything." And those words resonated, not just to people who were interested in politics, but to women who were in the corporate world, to women who were going to law school, just a few at those years. Now, so many more. Women who just dreamed to go into health care, not as a nurse, although some chose that and some men do as well, but as physicians. This was something that I truly believe changed. I would ask unanimous consent for 5 additional minutes and then turn it over to Senator Hutchinson.
With